Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. The undercard for the CHRIS EUBANK Jr versus CONOR BENN fight on 26th of April. The undercard's beginning to take shape. And there are actually a couple of fights on there that I think intrigue me a little bit more than the EUBANK Jr Benn fight. So far, I think, there's probably going to be more added, but so far, I think the one that stands out is Videll Riley, who's undefeated in 12 fights, taking on the once beaten Chevon Clark. Now, Clark, you may remember, the back end of last year, he had a terrific fight for the EBU title against Frenchman Leonardo Mosquera, and he lost a split decision. He was over in the first round, heavy. I mean, it's almost stopped. But he fought back, as you would expect from Clark. He's a tough old guy, originally from Jamaica, now based in Kent, I think in Gravesend. He's 34 years old, so the quick turnaround is understandable. You know, he wants to jump straight back into the fire. And Videll Riley, undefeated in 12, 7 KOs. He's only 27, 6'1", orthodox fighter. I mean, these guys are, cruisers. So, yeah, I think that's a really good matchup, Styles certainly hint that there's going to be a bit of an explosion there. Perfectly winnable fight for Clark, but likewise, Riley, I don't know. I'd have to really think about this one. The fights I look forward to the most are the ones where I think instinctively or initially I don't have a sort of prediction. I'm thinking, okay, I'll have to have a look at that one. I'll have to weigh everything up. And that is the one that stands out for me on the undercard. Now, there are some other, relatively intriguing fights. Liam Smith is coming back. He signed again with Matchroom. Went back to Matchroom, was with them before, had a little stint with Boxer, did not speak kindly of Ben Shalom, said Shalom favoured Eubank strongly. Of course, Smith knocked out Eubank in 4 rounds, and then Eubank repaid the favour, stopped Smith late on in the rematch. But Liam Smith said that Ben Shalom was all over Eubank, desperate to get the rematch on, but when Smith lost the rematch, the phone stopped ringing. So he did not speak highly of Ben Shalom, and shortly afterwards, Shalom signed Eubank. So there you go. That might reveal what was going on. But Liam, 33 wins, 4 defeats, and 1 draw, has fought in world-class or close to world-class for many years. Former WBO 154-pound champ. He is taking on the undefeated McKenna, who is 25 years old, from Ireland, 19 wins with 10 KOs, no draws, no defeats. Hasn't really fought anyone of note. I think he fought in America. He was over in America for a long, long time earlier on in his career. And then he came back to Britain. But there aren't any names on his record. There just aren't. And this has got the sort of air of, the old guard taking on, the supposed young gun. But unless Liam Smith has really regressed, probably more than we perhaps realise, I think this might be a case of him old manning McKenna. And they do say that with older fighters, and how old is Smith now? Was he 34, maybe 33, 34? They normally have one good fight left in them, if you know what I mean. So I wouldn't be surprised if he beat McKenna, but it's the old versus the new, and I think those are always good matchups, because they are the proverbial crossroads fight for the older guy, and the first real test for the younger guy. So that's kind of interesting. And then there's this real curio, Anthony Yard against Lyndon Arthur. They've been matched. Essentially we're talking a trilogy fight here, aren't we? Because they last fought in 2020, back end of 2020. No, they didn't. They had a rematch, didn't they? What was the rematch? The rematch, I think, was in 2021. The back end of 2020 was the first fight, and I think Arthur sprung an upset. It was a split decision. And then this was under Queensberry, if memory serves, for the Commonwealth title. Was the British on the line? I don't think it was. Okay. And then they fought like a year later at the back end of 2021. That's where the confusion is. I'm getting my wires crossed. Because, yeah, they're both towards the end of those respective years, 2020 and 2021. And Arthur got blown away in 4 rounds. And Arthur then left Frank Warren stable because it was so obvious that Frank was favouring Anthony Yarde at the time. There was no hint of having a decider because it's 1-1. But now they're going to have it 5 years later. I don't know about this one. Don't even get me started on Anthony Yarde's career. What the fuck he's done, I do not know. Lyndon Arthur at least has had a 12-round Riyadh gig against Dimitri Bivol, and he lasted the distance. So I don't think he won a round. Got floored as well in the 11th, but he made a bit of money, and at least he tested himself in a world title fight, WBA title fight. He then won a split decision over Liam Cameron, who is flavour of the month, having had that so-called controversial fight with Ben Whittaker. And Cameron's a good fighter, good domestic level fighter, but that was his only fight last year. So if he can upset Yarde and make it 2-1 in their little trilogy, and Yarde is 33 now, lest we forget, then I think he's back in the game, Lyndon. But both these guys, I think they're both 33. Crossroads fight again. But it is for them to have a 5-year gap between the second fight and the third fight. That is a little odd, I suppose. But I'm intrigued. I can't deny it. We've also got Chris Smith, who's coming back, having lost to Zurdo Ramirez, and really shown guts by the bucket against Ramirez because I think he had a broken hand, his face was smashed up, and it'll be intriguing to see how he comes back because it's miles on the clock. A beating like that can really, really take years off your career, maybe even your life, I don't know. But he's coming back against an American called Brandon Glanton, he calls himself bulletproof. Not quite sure whether he is, but he's 32, orthodox fighter, 5'11", 20 wins with 17 KOs, 2 defeats on points. And those defeats were in 2022 and 2023, and one was a split decision, one was a majority decision. I don't know, I can't remember. One of the fights I can't remember, I don't think I've seen it. But he did fight David Light, who ended up fighting Lawrence Okoli when he had the WBO cruiserweight title. And Light ended up, I think he's Canadian, he ended up having a serious injury. Had to have a brain operation, I think, and had to retire. But Glanton lost, I think it was a split decision to him. And the other loss was a majority. And they were back-to-back. Now, since then, he's only had 3 fights against modest opposition, not great opposition. I say that, a couple of, I think, had decent records, but I wasn't, again, you can have a glossy record, and if there are no real names on it, it does make you wonder, how good is this? But his last fight was last year. He had 2 fights last year, and his last one was an 11th round TKO over a guy over in Moscow. So this guy's travelled a bit. He's fought in France, he's fought in Dubai, he's fought in the United States, he's fought in Moscow. And the Moscow win, which I think was against a Russian, was an 11th round KO. Okay, and the guy had a 12-1 record. So, yeah, the guy, this Glanton, might be a bit of a sleeper. He might be someone who is probably better than those 2 back-to-back defeats suggest. So I think it's a decent comeback fight for Billum Smith. And again, there is a certain intrigue about that fight too. So this is beginning to take shape, this undercard. This, in case you didn't know, is at Tottenham Court Road, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 26th of April. My opinion on the headline. I think it's a gimmick fight. I'm not particularly bothered about that, but I'll watch it. The undercard. If they stack the undercard and they keep adding to it, yeah, it might be a nice night's boxing. Pay-per-view worthy? No, but then I don't bother with that anyway. So, anyway, what do you think? Have you heard any other rumours about who might be added? Who would you like to see added? And what do you think of these matchups so far? There's a couple of oddities on there, especially the Yard versus Arthur one. Riley versus Clark's the one I'm looking forward to. But let me know what you think. Comments below. Thanks very much for your time. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the like button and help out the channel. Spread the word about Joe's Son of Boxing. Many, many thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and bye for now.